Okay, so we can start. We can start now.
On twice, by the way.
Yeah, I'm just testing because I'm having some Wi-Fi issues, but my computer at home is hardware, but it's an old device. So sometimes it's a little glitchy. So.
Arshia, just one more thing. It's not broadcasting on Facebook Live right now, and it's not giving me that option for some reason.
Okay.
So do you want me to go ahead, or do you want me to see what's going on?
Let me know if you can
if you're able to, I guess. But don't worry about it too much if in case it's not possible, because we can just share it later on too, right?
Yeah. We're going to send it out to all our listservs and everyone with a donate button as well. So it should be okay.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, all right. So then we can start now.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I wanted to welcome you all to AMP's first ever virtual fundraiser. So just a little bit about AMP. We started about 16 years ago, and really our premise was twofold. One was to connect American Muslims who are working in diverse sectors of healthcare, and really more importantly was so that we can all collaborate together to work on public health initiatives as a group. And we really truly are guided by our faith, because our faith really mandates us to give back to society. We felt, we wanted to also just share like our mission. So our mission is really to strengthen the impact of Muslim health professionals to improve the health and wellness of all Americans. And that truly is our North Star. And as you hear our other board of directors throughout the presentation today, you'll notice that that the work that we've been doing really is kind of embodied in our mission. And really our three core areas of focus are mental health, advocacy for underserved communities and on behalf of health professionals, and also professional development. However, today we are not raising funds for professional development, as it's pretty much a self-funded program. So with that, I'm going to start this, and we're going to start off with our president, Dr. Hasan Shanawani. And Dr. Hasan Shanawani is, he's AMP's president, and he's also the current medical director for clinical performance improvement for Blue Cross Blue Shield, Michigan. With that, take it over, Dr. Shanawani.
Thanks, Arshia. First, let me say Assalamu alaikum to everyone that's listening and greetings. And most important, Ramadan Mubarak. We are in the middle of our blessed month. And I just wanted to take a minute to let you know what AMP means to me. AMP is an incredible organization. I remember when it started 16 years ago, when we were talking about this in Chicago. I was a guest that day at some of the founding meetings. And since then, it's really grown into the most important advocacy group for public health in America, especially those public health issues that focus on American Muslims, as well as a professional society that meets the needs of health professionals. It's an outstanding organization. And so when they invited me to join on the board this year, I was excited to do that. But little did I know back in February when I started what it was going to become to mean to me in the following months. As we struggle with this incredible pandemic that we're going through right now, AMP has served as the voice of health professionals to the Muslim community, both representing American Muslims to greater society, as well as speaking to the millions of Muslims in America as we struggle with everything from how to practice our faith on a daily basis on a regular day to how do we manage the enormous aspect of the most holy month, the best month of the year for us, the month of Ramadan, which some people might feel that it's been taken away from us by the virus, but because Allah is the best of planners and because Muslims are some of the most creative people out there, we've been witness to some incredible creativity in people celebrating their faith, reading Quran together, having Zoom iftars, and of course, having get-togethers like the one we're doing now. But Muslims have been looking for information, they've been looking for expertise, they've been looking for trusted advisors. And we've been able to work with people that you know throughout the community to help serve as those trusted advisors, both with the knowledge of medicine and public health, as well as the faith in God, that such that we aren't sacrificing one for the other, because you really can't have one without the other. And that's what AMHP AMP has meant to me, especially this year during this just unprecedented time. It's not like anything I've ever seen in my life or career as a physician. I'm an ICU doctor, and I'm an epidemiologist in a previous life years ago. And in my career, I've never seen anything like this. So welcome, and back to you, Arshia.
Okay. And then Hasan, can you share, can you talk a little bit about the National Muslim Task Force on COVID-19, how it got started, what was the premise behind it, and what are some things that we've been able to accomplish?
Yeah, absolutely. So back in March, when the epidemiologists within the Muslim community and experts, public health experts within the Muslim community that exist within AMP were beginning to talk to one another, this is well before Ramadan, we began to realize that there was this incredible threat to the health of people, and that this was something that could be spread to person. And we started really thinking about the challenges of how we could safely practice one of the most important aspects of our religion, of our deen, and that is when we get together for community worship known as Salatul Jam'ah. The word for Jam'ah in Arabic, literally, the word for Friday literally means getting together, congregation. It comes from the word Jama'ah, which means getting together. And we realized that if we wanted to safely navigate this while protecting our faith and the important acts of ibadah that work around Jam'ah, we couldn't do this without a lot of other experts. And we wanted to acknowledge an expert, recognize the experts throughout the community. And specifically, it started with leaders within the Muslim community, the Fiqh Council of North America, the Association of Muslim Jurists of America, AMJA, and of course our colleagues at the Islamic Medical Association of North America. What we then realized was that the public health implications on the economy, on mental health, on so many other things was so much bigger than just those core 4 organizations. And so we started bringing in more organizations. And at last, we've had over 30 organizations, national in stature, social services, mental health, public health, medical professionals, religious organizations, professional societies like chaplains and imams around the country. All of their organizations have come together for the task force to really get together, share information, share knowledge, and then distribute it out to our various groups of constituents and stakeholders, and the Muslims that we speak to, with whom we have voice. And the task force has really been maintaining that cohort of people. It's one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. Groups that I never thought I would be working with in the course of being a public health person have come together so that we can save ourselves, save our neighbors, protect our masjids from the dangers, the health dangers, while also simultaneously meeting the challenging financial issues that have been done with this in what is now the largest unemployment in the history of America since the Great Depression. Unemployment and not being able to pay for food is a health issue. It is a religious issue. Hunger is often a big threat to our deen, and charity is one of the most important things you can do, especially during this month. The whole month of Ramadan is to remind us of what happens when we are hungry, and unfortunately there's a lot of people. And so that task force has been doing a lot of incredible things for us, keeping that group together so that we can share information, share knowledge, and distribute it around the country quickly and safely so that it is vetted information from the experts who should be giving it out.
Great, thank you for that. So next up we have Dr. Shadi Shabak. He is AMP's Vice President. He's board certified in general and adolescent psychiatry as well as addiction medicine.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Hasan, for those excellent remarks about AMP. So I'm probably one of the newer people to AMP. As far as I really didn't know many of the people on the board when I was brought in as vice president, and it's been honestly a great honor. I've never really I've been part of a lot of organizations, but this one is really special. Through working with AMP, through doing these different webinars and seminars and participating with the task force through this terrible pandemic, not only have we helped others, but I think we've helped each other too. The board kind of has come together and become pretty close and very I would consider them friends. This organization is extremely sincere. The people working in this organization are wonderful, and so it's been an extreme honor for me. As far as I'm a psychiatrist, so I do a lot of mental health work regionally, and with AMP, we've really done a lot of we've kind of been doing a lot of mental health stuff as well through this pandemic. Some of the things we've done is we have a mental health committee that's focused on putting out information about mental health, putting out infographics, webinars, and seminars, as well as now we're kind of moving into including research in that committee. So we're conceptualizing some research topics and things like that to put forward, focused on Muslims. Just to give you an idea of the diversity and the multidisciplinary approach of AMP, the mental health committee has a psychiatrist, myself, a clinical psychologist, and a clinical social worker. So that just tells you that even in that committee, it's very multidisciplinary with just 3 people. And we're working on recruiting some more people into the committee from the wider community, inshallah. Apart from that, AMP has done great things, many great things over the last year and two. That's before my time as well. One of the things that AMP really did that stands out to me is the mental health first aid training programs. Within 12 months, AMP was able to train more than 500 people in mental health first aid. I think that's spectacular and amazing. And we're working on hopefully trying to do some more of that as this pandemic eases. We're even looking at doing them virtually as well. But to train over 500 people, these people include parents, right? They include Islamic school teachers. They include religious figures. They include friends and family of people who are struggling with mental health. They include people who have mental health issues. And what mental health first aid does is it's similar to CPR, right? So CPR is something happens, you run, you go through the process of do they need any do they need chest compressions, do they need breaths, do they need etc. Do you call 911? With mental health first aid, it's very similar in the sense that you're learning the warning signs of severe mental health issues. You're learning when to call 911, when not to, what kind of things to say, what kind of things to do in a crisis situation. It's a valuable resource for the wider Muslim community, especially as we struggle with as being part of this country and this nation, and there's a suicide issue in this country, and we're part of this country and we're struggling with the same things as the wider society. And so it's very important for us to have these trainings. It's very important for teachers and parents and mothers and fathers and friends to have this training, and AMP provided it. And I think it's just amazing that there's been over 500 people trained in the mental health first aid program. And I hope to see much more of that. But again, we don't just do that as well. We do other things, like I said, the webinars, the research, the committee, and we also have a mental health task force that we are part of, and we collaborate with other organizations as well.
Thank you for that. And so next up, we have Dr. Sana Sayed. Dr. Sana Sayed is AMP's Health Policy and Advocacy Director. She's also a Senior Director, Medical Director at Sanofi.
Thank you, Arshia. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Sana Sayed, as Arshia mentioned, and I have actually been a part of AMP for about 3 years now. So I was part of this organization for some time prior to the COVID pandemic, and now I still continue to be part of this organization. Very happy to be here. I would say that AMP has been advocating for various health policies for a very long time. And we also participated last year in National Muslim Advocacy Day, pushing for critical health policies related to public health. And now with the advent of the COVID pandemic, the unfortunate occurrence of the pandemic, we have recognized that there is a huge need for advocacy. And not only that, but there's also a greater sense of urgency. And AMP has really worked to rise to this occasion and work on various avenues to work on COVID-related policies that are needed right now. To that end, we have engaged in sending letters directly to various federal and state officials on policies that impact our frontline workers and the public health need in general. This includes issues related to PPE, to increased testing, and we've sent letters to Vice President Pence, for instance, to Secretary Azar, also the CDC and the Surgeon General. And then in order to increase our civic engagement, we have also reached out directly to various policymakers. And one of our initiatives that is in the works right now is an effort to connect congressional leaders with the frontline workers in their constituency. The idea behind that is to ensure a conversation between these leaders and their constituents that may lead to eventually policies that are needed right now to make informed decisions. And our members and others can participate in this as well by signing up for this effort. And we've also recently worked on releasing action alerts in collaboration with an advocacy organization, Engage. And this is part of AMP's work with the National Muslim Task Force that Hasan alluded to earlier. And the idea behind that is that we've sent out action alerts for invoking DPA for increased PPE and also for increased testing and other measures. And this will allow our members and other folks to directly reach out to their state representatives and other federal leaders to show that they also are concerned about these issues and to amplify their AMP's advocacy work and also to advocate on behalf of the public for these crucial measures required in this pandemic. I would say that one other thing that has happened because of the pandemic is that a lot of organizations have come together and realized that advocacy, in fact, is not competitive, it is collaborative. So as a result of this, AMP has also joined a coalition run by Physicians for Human Rights, where we're coming together to work on policies and other advocacy measures and solutions in general for this public health crisis. We've also created alliances with Doctors for America. We've created alliances with other physician groups like Women's Neurologist Group and a public health organization as well, Community Catalyst. And this really is a time where I think people need to come together and work towards a solution because we're facing a huge issue right now. And as both Shadi and Hasan mentioned, this is a time where we need to come together and work towards solutions together. And that is, I think, what AMP has been trying really hard to do as well. Back to you, Arshia. You're on mute.
Thank you, Sana. So next up is Imam Suhaib Webb. Imam Suhaib needs absolutely no introduction. He is the founder of Swiss, which I encourage everyone to check out. They're offering free virtual classes, and they even have a scholarship program. You can go online at www.suhaibwebb.com. And with that, I will turn it to Imam Suhaib Webb.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Rasulillah, وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن والاه. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, everybody. Mashallah, it's certainly a pleasure to be with so many people I've known for a while. Sana, mashallah, someone I've ran into quite often, and to see fellow professionals and frontline workers. And I think before we start, being an imam in a community, you find yourself kind of at this strange junction between physicians and people who, especially before Obamacare, Muslims who didn't have care. And even till now, some of the work that we do virtually, I don't think people are able to appreciate, and maybe Dr. Shadi can talk about this as well, the traumatic impact of this virus on people. I have a 90-year-old grandmother who she lives alone, and none of us can see her because we're scared, if she God forbid gets sick. She has a number of underlying health care issues as well as just being 90 years old. And she's like extremely lonely. I get texts from Muslims who are scared they have COVID and have no way of knowing if they have it. So it's Muslim physicians like yourselves who have partnered with us, whether it was through the North American Fit Council that I work with, or AMJA, or just myself. I got so many texts. I put this message on Instagram saying, hey, we're looking for a physician to talk to someone who's scared they have COVID. I think 50 physicians responded, to the point that I had to put out another post. Is like, okay, hey, we found somebody, right? Okay. Someone was like, I'm a physician in Dubai, but like, I'm happy. I was like, okay, she doesn't need a physician in Dubai. So I want to thank you all for kind of being in your spaces. I think oftentimes physicians don't get that kind of recognition. And in New York City, where I'm from, we saw a physician, unfortunately, 2 weeks ago, she killed herself. She was one of our most prominent, talented physicians. I received phone calls from a physician who is in Boston. Of course, all doctors know about Boston and what Boston means to the medical world. And he was just crying. And he was like, I'm in intensive care, man. And it's literally like The Walking Dead or Independence Day. It's something that I wasn't trained to expect. So I just thought I would tell you before we talk about the great work you do, there's like actually numerous ahadith about people who look after the sick. They're so important that Imam Ibn Hajar, and Imam Ibn Hajar is one of the great luminaries of Islamic thought and especially the science of hadith. He actually lost 3 daughters to the bubonic plague. One in 819 after Hijri, 2 in 819 after Hijri, and 1 in 833 after Hijri. 6 children, he lost 3 to a plague. So he wrote a book called Badlul Ma'un fi Fadli Ta'un. So he wrote an entire book where he collected all of the religious kind of statements about plagues and pandemics and epidemics. And, I'm sure it was somewhat therapeutic for him. And then in the 5th chapter, you get to this section where it's like the virtues of being a doctor, like the virtues of serving the sick. So then he mentions maybe 5 to 6 beautiful prophetic narrations that I think, we should share with you guys just to give you that kind of support and boost that you give us. And, for example, Imam Tirmidhi says, whoever works at the service of the ill will be in the highest level of Jannah. This is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Another narration says that a person who is actively engaged in serving, the Prophet said, who is actively engaged in serving people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will enshroud them with rahmah until they sit down, like until they're done. So maybe in those moments where you're tired, serving patients, you feel like you can't keep going, just remember kind of these beautiful narrations of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That being said, my work formally, being an imam was like being a running back in the NFL. You got about 2 years, you blow an ACL, and then you become a personal trainer at Planet Fitness or something. It's a tough job, but I can say that in my early career in Boston, we started to notice, especially with incoming refugees, that were having like marital issues. They were having problems in their home. that these were issues beyond the scope of imams. These were the issues beyond the scope of an Azhari trained imam. So we opened up a mental health intake center in the masjid. We partnered with people from Brigham. We partnered with people from Harvard who are Muslim physicians. And we started at that time like an intake for people who are having issues. And I think we saved, by the grace of Allah, like a number of marriages, children who came with refugees who had been traumatized, been separated from their parents. So I just want to emphasize, wherever you are as a physician, don't be shy to reach out to religious leadership and say, is there something I can do to help you? Is there some way I can help you? Whether it's through that, or I had an individual who had thrombosis, got Eliquis, had no insurance. How much is a bottle of Eliquis? Went to the pharmacy, was told that it's $350. I was like, man, like, who are the drug dealers, right? Like, who's selling cocaine in the streets, right? Like, $350. And that was actually me. I had a blood clot in my leg and was hospitalized for 5 days, and went to a pharmacy and was told, it's $350. Like, what am I gonna do? At that time I didn't have insurance, and it was physicians who, were able to help me out. And until, I was working in the university. So I just want to emphasize, we're talking about for broader America, of course, but, at the bare foundations of the Muslim community, where you have, they say now 30% of American Muslims are under the poverty line. When you're running into communities that are traumatized, have mental health issues, physical health issues, things like diabetes. A congregant called me 3 months ago and said his insurance cut out his insulin. You oftentimes are some of the first people that someone like I am going to call. And I think, Dr. Hasan, we know that there's this sick nexus of corporate power, medicine, education, military industrial complex, prison industrial complex, all these kind of things work together. And medicine is so expensive for people to this day. So I just wanted to say that I think the work that AMP is doing is fundamental. Most of the great ulama, starting with Sayyidah Aisha, they asked Sayyidah Aisha, if you could be anything but Sayyidah Aisha, who would you be? She's like, I would be a physician. There are some reports that she studied medicine, in her sphere, like homeopathic medicine. Sayyidah Aisha was like in the homeopathic medicine, right? Imam Nawawi from Syria, the great scholar, great muhaddith, he said, I went to study medicine, but I didn't have enough time to complete my religious education. Like, he actually went in to the College of Medicine. Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, Jawziyah, also he studied for some time to be involved in medicine. And they said, because religion and medicine heal, right? There's this intersection of healing that comes from both. So I can't emphasize, and I know sometimes, like, and I'm going to keep it honest, like, sometimes physicians will tell me, like, hey, I'm not the most religious person, right? They just say, like, I'm not the most religious person. I'm a doctor. It doesn't mean like I'm necessarily religious. It doesn't matter, right? If you're helping people, community should welcome you because you're helping people, right? Religiosity is not the issue here. The issue is that you guys have this great talent and you understand things. And I will add this to it. With the advent of Dr. Google, it even becomes more of a need to have people that can assuage people's fears, I think is the best word. Like, people will go and read something, they come to my office and like, oh my God, my life's gonna end. I read this thing on Google. It's like when people read about religion on Google. So I can't emphasize your importance to the community, especially even things like in Boston when we needed people to navigate Obamacare. Obamacare was extremely complex. And if you are a Syrian refugee who doesn't speak English, we brought in physicians to help them understand how to navigate Obamacare, right? That's prophetic work, right? That's the work of prophets, to help people who are in need of help and don't know really how to navigate the process. So I have a tremendous respect for you because I've been able to partner with American Muslim physicians, some of them with AMP, to do like things that aren't heralded, right? Like they're not on the stage at ISNA, they should be, right? They're not getting awards somewhere in some big banquet, you know, with some cheesy baklava and some canned hummus and some, you know, heat and eat gulab jamun. But like the role that you're performing, especially now. I talked to my former employee yesterday who actually was put into a coma on April 8th. She woke up last week. They had her on a ventilator. She had COVID. She was a Muslim sister. Muslim doctors were able to arrange that the Quran could be played next to her in intensive care. And she told me, I remember hearing the Quran. She said, I just remember hearing the Quran. And when she came out of it, was told, like, you're 10% of the people who made it. You know, we don't know how you made it. You were in a induced coma. The Muslim physicians were able to facilitate things for her when she wasn't even able to function. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase you and bless you. And I think moving forward, these kind of organizations like AMP are crucial because we do need critical mass. What I can say that I love about our generation and what you guys are doing is in the past, it was very hard to find, I'm not saying anything bad about anyone, but like physicians organizations, it was hard to find like partnerships with the North American Fit Council and AMJA. And one of the things that we, you know, Dr. Mozammo Siddiqui always stresses is like on these issues, we need to bring in physicians. On these issues, we need to talk to professionals. The last point is that we can also be advocates for your causes. So someone like Dr. Shahdi, right? I remember in Boston, Dr. Sarah King, I don't know if you know of her, you know, people approached us about, can we start something that addresses like the mental health of people? And we had to initially kind of walk into communities and advocate on behalf of the physicians and tell people like mental illness is not something that you have to be worried about. Mental illness is not something that we should look down upon. We did breast cancer stuff in the mosque, and initially just having to be advocates and partnering with physicians to kind of let people know, hey, this is something that's okay. This is not the end of the world. So I'm hopeful as we move forward, and let's hope that this pandemic moves on. I want to encourage you to think about like really 4 things. Number 1 is do not hesitate to make that call to an imam and say, listen, I have something to offer your community. Right? I have something I think that can help. Or your local Islamic school. I have a large number of young American Muslims that contact me who are cutters. I had one who bled out and she died. There are things that are not addressed. And oftentimes there's not an infrastructure in our community to serve these people in a way that makes them feel safe. So when you step up to the plate and you make that phone call to an imam and you educate that imam, you meet that imam, you have that conversation, that imam becomes your advocate. And that allows you to partner to really focus on the overall health of our community. We even did things like interval training. We talked about the importance of like high intensity interval training for aunties. And we did like yoga. And now I know Imam Khalid, where I work at NYU, they do yoga, right, for people, stretching. The second thing after making that phone call is I think it's very important in the face of this pandemic that you are putting out as much information as you can about what is really correct. I received a phone call yesterday from someone that asked me, like, did you get a flu shot last year? And I was like, yes. And I'm like, well, you know, people that got flu shots are dying more than people who didn't have flu shots. And I was like, where'd you hear that? Oh, you know, I saw it on YouTube, right? So it's very important that, and I think this is where that partnership with like AMJA and even the North American Fit Council, we should be referring people to you, right? We should be saying like, here's where you can go for, and I would hope even that some of the things you put out can be translated into different languages, because it's oftentimes an older demographic that's vulnerable to misinformation. But I think like having, and I hope you can do this, like consistent information about, especially this pandemic. It is traumatizing and frightening our community in ways that I haven't seen, right? It's similar to almost like 9/11, how 9/11 Muslims were really worried and frightened. This is something that's beyond just Muslims. This is everyone. The third thing is to make sure you're taking care of yourselves. You know, physicians, you're like the guy who called me from Boston who just melted, you know, in the ICU, had to step out. I've known him for years. And he just said, listen, man, I never thought I would see this many people sick. He called me and said, I just saw a 39-year-old man go into respiratory failure. That is the respiratory failure of someone in their 80s. And this person has no underlying health issues and is like in perfect shape. And I can't save him. And I think that's the last point is remember that the power to cure and the power to heal is Allah. You know, the Prophet ﷺ, Allah said to Muhammad, you know, you didn't throw it, Allah threw it. Like, so you're not healing, Allah is healing. And then finally is I want to encourage the community to financially support you, to back the work that you do. I'm looking forward to seeing some projects that come out, you know, in the future where at a grassroots level, we're educating people, we're talking about things, and then physicians are coming in and teaching the community about things. I remember at NYU, where we have a number of like incredible, we have actually 2 mental health providers on staff at the ICNYU for our students, 2 Muslim women who were like amazing. And I remember one of them, she came and talked to our students for maybe 20 minutes. And one thing she said impacted everyone. And she was like, how often do you go to the gym? Like, we go to the gym 3 times a week. You know, we try to eat clean. And she's like, well, your mental health is very similar to your physical health. And you've got to make sure that you're taking care of it. And from that point on, you know, anyone that was at that talk, when I run into them, like, you know, that talk really reformatted how I look at my own mental and emotional health as well as others. So I hope that people will support you financially. I want to encourage, physicians are known to be able to write big checks, so this shouldn't be a problem, mashallah. And nobody's golfing right now because of well, one person is golfing, we know who he is, but he whose name shall not be said. But, you know, a lot of us are not able to spend the time that we did before in leisure. So I really want to encourage people to support. So first, thank you for the work that you do on behalf of many. And then secondly, the beautiful narrations of the Prophet ﷺ about being in your position. You know, in the books of fiqh, a physician is allowed to join prayers because the centrality of the role that a physician plays. And according to the Hanbali madhab, they can join prayers. A physician doesn't have to change their clothes if there's najis on their clothing because of the role that they play, right, in serving people. So there's a great esteem given to medical providers and health providers. The third thing that I talked to, or the second thing I said was make that phone call, right? Make sure you're making that phone call to your local communities. And you may run into some people who don't understand, and that's where you want to try to create those backdoor relationships with imams and educators who can facilitate your strategic entrance into community. Things like eating, you know, a lot of dietary issues in our community are really out of whack. A lot of roles you can play in those areas. The third is make sure you're taking care of yourself, right? You know, I think a lot of us that are on the front lines in whatever role we play, we sometimes go until we burn out. We feel this is fi sabilillah, and then we're useless because we're in a place where we need acute service. The fourth is we talked about making sure that people support you and are really you know, financially invested. And then the fifth, I think I talked about, is looking forward to seeing some community-driven projects where we can partner with you. Yesterday, I was on a webinar with Nasiha out of Canada, who basically focuses on mental health issues pertaining to young people. And they're on Instagram, like they're with that young group of kids, and they're speaking to them and helping them. So I hope as well the AMP will be able to amplify its efforts, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum. And I again encourage people to support you generously.
Okay. Jazakallah khair, Imam Suhaib. Thank you very much for that. And I think you bring up a very key point about self-care for health professionals. You know, in the midst of this pandemic, I think individuals who are on the front line, sometimes, you know, they tend to forget that taking care of themselves and their mental well-being is so paramount and important. And so at AMP, one of the things that we are planning on doing is holding a series of mental health, mental wellness webinars that are specifically dedicated to health professionals. So they can kind of, you know, deconstruct and understand like what are some techniques and tools that they can use. So thank you for those words of wisdom. With that, there's some questions that have come in. And so Sana, question for you is, how has COVID-19 impacted health policy priorities, considering as a healthcare system already we've had inadequacies?
Thanks, Arshia, and thank you for the question. I would say that healthcare was already a huge issue to begin with in this country, and we know that because we've been working on some of those issues prior to COVID as well. Two things happened with the pandemic. One thing was that those pre-existing deficits that we were working on were unfortunately amplified. So Medicaid expansion is still an issue. It just needed to be done yesterday. So obviously we're working on those lines as well. And then we suddenly have a new array of problems that we have to deal with. When we talk about increased testing for COVID, that is a new public health issue, a new healthcare issue that we need to work on. So I would say that the pre-existing priorities still exist. We still need to address those. They're causing a somewhat greater degree of problems than they did. It was already a problem, but now it's amplified. And then the other aspect is that now we have a different set of issues which fall into sort of the public health response that's needed for this pandemic that we also have to currently address. So I would just say that now the priorities have increased in number, and I would also suggest that they have increased in terms of urgency to address them, which is why you would notice that it has really amped up their activities as well on those lines.
Okay, thank you. And Hasan, question for you is, once the pandemic ends, what do you envision the role of the National Task Force?
Thanks for the question. It's a great question. I think I can provide no better answer to that than the great words of Imam Suhaib that he just shared with us. Clearly, you know, American Muslim health professionals are smart, intelligent people, but we always have something to learn, and we always have good ideas that can come from other knowledge and stuff. And you don't have to be a medical professional to identify. In fact, some of the best ideas come from some of, you know, to identify the needs of American Muslims and just Americans in general. How can we meet the needs of Imam Suhaib's grandmother? And it never occurred to me, although it makes perfect sense, that we should be translating some of our good work into the languages of the geographic origin of various Muslim countries that a lot of immigrant Muslims have come from. There's a lot of underrepresented groups. Some of the social determinants of health that Sana touched on can be touched on. I mean, the beauty of the task force is it's really brought together this incredible, Shadi used the word multidisciplinary, and it really is incredibly multidisciplinary. And keeping that together and talking about the needs, because everything touches health, and as Imam Suhaib said, everything touches our deen. And so bringing all those great groups together and keeping them together so that we can learn from one another, sharing knowledge, sharing good ideas, and then disseminating it for the betterment of all Americans is, I think, the future, what I hope to see out of what has started as a coalition, but will be really the strong collaboration of outstanding organizations, inshallah, biznillah.
Inshallah. So there is an attendee who asked, you know, if there are any recommendations or resources for Muslims in the community that are lonely, suffering from mental health issues alone. Are there any support groups? And let me say to that.
There is, in Texas, there's someone there doing like virtual support groups. Her name is Sadia Ahmed, I think. She reached out to me a few weeks ago, and asked me some questions about, you know, how to go about doing these, what kind of things would be more important than others, what kind of groups, stuff like that. She has this ongoing projects in Texas, very active in the community down there. And I know that she is either launching or has launched some support groups. Her name is Sadia Ahmed. I don't know her, I can't give her contact information on here, but her spelling of her name, I mean, it's Saadia Ahmed. So I think you could find her on social media, on Facebook. She's very kind and would probably be more than open to answer some of those questions. Maybe if we can, maybe if I could get her contact information, ask her for it and then post it on the AMP social media, that might be helpful.
Imam Suhaib, are you familiar with any other resources that community members can tap into?
Regarding? Specifically for what?
For individuals who are lonely, suffering from mental health issues.
I mean, that's where I would refer to you guys. I refer people generally to like Khalil Center. I refer people to Access in LA. And then in New York City, we have a group of physicians that we kind of refer people to locally. But I would say we notice that loneliness is something, especially in big cities, that, you know, Muslims, we sometimes, we're like a Tyler Perry movie, right? Our families drive us crazy, but then like once we're far away from them, we realize like, oh man, I miss my family. And this has compounded the loneliness for people. And you know, it's hard. I don't know. I don't have that skill set to be able to tell people how do you deal with loneliness. So I think another thing I would encourage you to think about is like doing webinars or even like Instagram lives with like people like myself, Omar Soleiman, Yasmin Mugahed, where you're fielding questions, right? Where people can ask, hey, what are the steps for loneliness? How do I deal with loneliness? So again, I think our role in this is to make sure that we have that entry point for you within certain demographics. So that's what I try to do, is refer people like to Heather Laird in LA. There's a few folks out there that we kind of consistently send folks to.
Okay, great, thank you. And then Sana, another question is, you know, what role does civic engagement play into AMP's health policy and advocacy strategy?
Thanks, Arshia. That's a great question and very relevant right now. I think that civic engagement is crucial. I'd like to give people historic example in that the Affordable Care Act was implemented because of advocacy. So advocacy is not something that is restricted to organizations. It does require civic engagement. And I think to that end, this is why this, since the pandemic hit, we've been increasing efforts to amplify civic engagement. And in our current strategy, we have different avenues that we've implemented by which folks can engage with us and help spread the word, and also work on these critical issues that we're working on. One of those things is the action alerts that I mentioned. Those were disseminated through our network and through some of our partner organizations in the coalition as well. And that will allow you to add your voice to the issues that we are working on. For instance, invoking DPA for PPE. I mean, that is such a long-standing issue, and it just, the more you work on, the more voices that are added to it, the greater chances we have, because that's how advocacy works. So this is why civic engagement is critical. We can put all of the fancy organizations on a piece of paper. The numbers are what tilt things to our favor. It's not the organizations, of course they matter. There's a weight that they bring with them, but we also need critical numbers. This is why civic engagement is so important. This is why, and it takes less than 5 minutes, I'm telling you, like these action alerts, it's just a matter of clicking. Everything is already written out. We've already auto-filled all of the emails, the people you need to send the letters to, everything's done. The letter is written. You just have to believe in it, and you just have to push that button, send, and that's it. That's all it takes. So civic engagement mind is very important. And then another effort that we've started is direct outreach to congressional leaders. And one of our key sort of thought processes was to bring frontline workers to speak to these policymakers. The idea behind that is that we feel like there's need for informed decisions. Now, these frontline workers and other healthcare workers who are impacted by COVID, they can speak to these issues from their own experience. And that is what we need right now. So we have sent out another sort of survey or form to fill out if you're interested in engaging with us on that effort as well. So I really think that adding your voice to be a part of the solution of this great problem that we have right now is critical right now. We really need those numbers. We really need those ideas. We need those people to be a part of this advocacy. Like I mentioned before, advocacy is completely collaborative. That is the only way it works.
Okay, thank you. And Shadi, as a general and adolescent psychiatrist, can you touch upon the impact of COVID-19 on children and youth? And what are some strategies that parents can engage in to help?
I think adolescents and youth are extremely affected by this. Adolescents usually are in school till about June, mid-June or so. So they're obviously, their life is completely different now. They're home. Some might be happy about it, but then they were happy about it for the first few weeks, and then they realize it's actually like really boring because you can't leave the house much. So their life kind of got upended. And emerging youth, right? So those are the emerging adults between age of 18 and 25, maybe even 30. Those people are in college, and they may be living in apartments by themselves. They may not be married. They may not have a family that lives with them because they're young adults. They're trying to make it on their own. And then this thing hits, so now they're stuck inside. So it's really, I look at it as bimodal. You have the emerging adults and youth on one end, and the elderly on the other hand that are struggling with this loneliness. Of course, there's a lot of people in between as well, but those two age groups seems like they're going to be struggling a lot with loneliness because they live by themselves, or they're very, they're just kind of isolated in many respects. With adolescents and children, what parents can do is try to spend some time with them, actually teach them, work with them, right? There's Zoom classes and stuff. They're not ideal at all. I mean, my kids love going to, for example, they go to Montessori school. They enjoy the interaction and the social interactions and things like that. And so definitely the Zoom thing is just, it's not ideal, but at least it's something that the parents can be there to provide that social interaction as they learn from the lessons that's being provided, if there is a Zoom lesson. Other things that parents can do is, I think a lot of times, and I've said this before, is we all live together in the same household, but we don't all know each other really sometimes because we're so busy with day-to-day life that this is a good opportunity for us to get to kind of know each other, know the people that we live with a little bit more than we have in the past. So these are things, use this time wisely if you're with your family to really get to know one another, to talk to one another, have these discussions with one another. As far as the young adults that are maybe living alone, that becomes up to friends and family to reach out to them, and for them to also understand that they can reach out to friends and family, that there are virtual spaces where they can have, they can chill and talk and catch up on things. So those sort of things, maybe try to take advantage of the technology until things kind of start to get back to where we can actually be with each other face to face.
Great. Okay. And this question is for both you and for Imam Suhaib Webb as well, to just kind of, so Imam Suhaib can speak from the faith perspective, but what advice would you give someone who's experiencing depression and anxiety? So if Shadi, if you can just start off maybe from a professional perspective, and Imam Suhaib, if you can draw from any faith guidelines that we can draw from.
So I think that there's, when you're struggling with anxiety or depression, it depends on how serious it is, if you need to get professional help or not. One of the things that I always caution against is replacing any type of person in your life with a professional. So if I'm feeling a little anxious, I don't always need to go to a professional. I could go to family and friends and imams and things like that. We don't want to create this society where every time something goes wrong, whether mild or not, that we run to the professional instead of going to our natural support systems that are in place for us. So it's important to recognize when those natural support systems can work and when they don't work. When they don't work is when the panic and anxiety is really, really stifling someone's day-to-day life, where they're having excessive panic and worry to the point where, you know, it's no longer just about an adjustment to the behavior or to the situation that they're under. It becomes more of a pattern of behavior that really stifles their ability to live a normal, for the most part, life. And they're having suicidal thoughts. They may be hallucinating. They may be thinking about death and dying, difficulty getting out of bed, right? These are very biological symptoms that then require some kind of professional help. If someone is having a bad day or someone is a little bit down because something bad happened, those are normal reactions. And that's where you rely on your social support network, the natural social support network. And if it gets worse, that's when you seek professional help from your primary care doctors, usually the first line, you know, and then they will send you to mental health professionals. But you could go directly to therapists, social workers. I always say that, you know, it starts with family, then the imam, then the primary care doctor, and then the specific specialized mental health care professional.
Suhaib?
Yeah, and I mean, I think, you know, you asked me to address this as well in my speech, the idea of, you know, Islam's kind of take on mental health. You know, there's a lot to learn from the 3rd chapter of the Quran when the Sahaba lost in Uhud. I mean, that was a time when they were down. Allah says to them, وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا. Don't be overcome by anxiety. Don't be overcome by grief. There's also, it's interesting, you know, I'm sure you know there's 7 different qira'at. And one of the readings, أَصَابَهُمُ الْقَرْحِ, which is Hafs and Asim, which most of us are reading. But the narration of Sayyidina Imam al-Sha'bah from Imam Asim, أَصَابَهُمُ الْقُرْحِ. Qarh means they were impacted by an external pain. But the reading of Sayyidina Sha'bah means they were impacted by an internal pain, an emotional trauma. And in both, Allah says He removed them as a blessing to them. So as a community, we find here in these verses some kind of direction to look after the emotional, psychological needs of people. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Idkhalu surura ala akhika al-Muslim." You know, to bring happiness to a Muslim will obligate paradise for you. There's also a very beautiful narration where the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah has chosen friends, and they asked the Prophet, who are the chosen friends of Allah? And he said, those who love bi ruhillah, qawmun yatahabbuna bi ruhillah, people who love by the ruh of Allah. And one scholar said, because the ruh is what brought life to Adam, and the ruh of love is what resuscitates people and heals them. Muslim love, right, in the face of Islamophobia in a post-colonial world is an act of resistance. We should be framing love as an act of resistance. So what I agree with Shadi. I may add one component though, and that is, first of all, as an imam, I had to go and talk to people like Shadi and say, like, I don't want to send everyone to you, right? You know, someone lost their Snoopy pencil. We don't want to send them to Shadi, right? Someone got a bad grade on a test. You know, we're not going to send them to Shadi. Someone, you know, overate Nahari and they gave up on keto. We don't need to send them to Shadi, right? But that's what we used to do because we want to take care of our people. But then when, you know, I engage with people like Shadi and they're like, listen, these are the kind of normative, and you talked about it, normative kind of behaviors. And then these are some of the behaviors where a person is no longer able to function. So I think his family and then the imam, but sometimes the imam runs into the issue that the family is the cause of the depression, or that the family is the cause of even normal pain. So sometimes the imam has to go family, imam, back to family, and try to help negotiate some of the challenges. Like one of the challenges I see now is amongst women whose mothers body shamed them. I had a sister who told me at the age of 13, her mother took her to Jenny Craig. She now has anorexia. Trying to continue to tell her mother, like, it is a moral crime, it is a religious crime for you to body shame your daughter. And then sending that young lady to someone like Shadi. So we also, I think, something that I hope, Shadi, you should like break this down for your moms. It was beautiful what you said. We should be reinforcing local support networks that people normally will use. And then there are the exceptions to the rule where we want to be able to refer people. So that's kind of the same, almost the same pattern that we do, right? Family, Imam, then sometimes you're back in family to help negotiate trauma. This happens a lot with converts, right? You can't really send the convert to the family. You have to go into the family and talk to the family. And then if those aren't working, and if we see that someone's no longer, like I've noticed that where people, I just can't get out of bed, cutters, suicidal thoughts, Allah hates me, I have no reason to live, then we start to look towards professional help.
Great, thank you. So we're almost at time. So I just want to thank all our speakers and especially our esteemed guest, Imam Suhaib Webb, for taking the time to, be with us today. And just want to mention that, we do have a generous donor who's willing to match up to $20,000 in donations collected this month. And some of our programs are eligible for zakat, if in case that's an option that you're interested in. And we can donate online at AMHP.US. Please do reach out to us if you're also interested in getting involved. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Hasan to make a closing statement for a minute, and then we'll have Imam Suhaib close us off with a dua.
Just wanted to take a quick moment to thank you all for spending the hour with us. Again, to wish you Ramadan Mubarak, and that may Allah accept your siyam and your qiyam and all of your ibadah. And I hope you found solace and guidance in the really outstanding words of our co-presenters, Dr. Syed, Dr. Shebak, Imam Webb. Really some outstanding thoughts from all of you. Barakallah feek, I really appreciate all of you spending your time with us. We're already halfway through. So Ramadan and Eid is coming. So I just wanted to be one of the first to wish you, inshallah, Eid Mubarak as well, because the month, with everything going on, it's hard to imagine, but the month is going to come and go with the bat of an eyelash. And with that, I turn it back over to Imam Webb.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa man wala. We begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We send peace and blessings upon our beloved messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Oh Allah, we know that one of your attributes is the healer, so we ask you by your transcendent power and grace that you extend the blessing of healing to these wonderful physicians. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to protect them, to increase them, to make sure that they are taking care of themselves. We ask that you utilize them to heal this country and to push this country not only to a physical healing and an emotional healing, but a total healing. نسألك يا ربنا أن تثبتنا الحق. We ask you that you keep us firm upon the truth and that you also help us with any challenges that we may be facing here or abroad. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Ameen. Jazakallah khair. Thank you, everyone.